Another hunter was on the trail. This one seemed to have little more information or hard evidence about Mark than the others. Still, it was a worry. It would be a tragedy if some federal lawmen trapped Mark and he had to stand trial for the good work he was doing. No, the penetrator must be protected at all costs. He had gone into battle almost 24 times now, fighting for the little guy, for the down and outer, for the honest cop and politician. These missions had been against terrible odds, with the hoodlums and police both often trying to eliminate the penetrator. And so far, Mark Harden, known now in many parts of the world as the penetrator, had charged through and won each time, despite the odds, but often he paid a tremendous physical and mental price. It had been several years now since the professor had met Mark as a just-discharged veteran who had been broken up in Vietnam, not by the enemy, but by a small, self-serving clique of army extremists who hated him for exposing a giant military goods black market in Saigon. He had come to the desert on the advice of his old UCLA football coach and a good friend of Professor Haskins. Once there, he mended in the Southern California sun and the Calico Mountains near Barstow. The professor had built an ecologically perfect hideaway in the vaulted rooms of an old borax mine, and what little work that was done on the surface was built in, blended, and camouflaged with the surrounding desert and bluffs, so the stronghold was almost impossible to find. That was the idea. At the stronghold, Mark met the ancient Cheyenne David Red Eagle. He told Mark he was half Cheyenne and took Mark under his tutorship, teaching him all of the old-time Indian ways of survival, of desert fighting, religion, medicine, and body conditioning. Each time Mark returned from a battle, the old Indian put Mark on a regimen to get him healthy again and to build up his strength to a fighting pitch. Professor Haskins served as research and outside contact man, utilizing his hundreds of loyal students and colleagues around the nation to gain special information on almost any subject, including data on criminal problem areas. The professor had a dozen such situations on the planning board in his study. Some were worsening to the point they would need attention soon. The professor hoped that this latest FBI bulletin to all law enforcement agencies in the nation did not trigger any police or FBI trouble for Mark. The cover name of John Savage was useless now. Usually, such a cover was good for one operation only, since the local police and FBI men debriefed everyone after any contact with a man who even might be the penetrator, and names were hard to protect. The professor was pleased, however, with the way most of these strangers had helped shield the vital description of the penetrator. Most who were in close contact with Mark realized his essential purpose and knew he was a protector. They would not violate that trust and his help to them by giving out a clear and solid description of him. This whole crime-fighting work had begun several years ago. Mark had just come to the stronghold, and the professor's niece had been there for a vacation. She and Mark had fallen desperately in love, and together they probed Mark's background in some Los Angeles County records. Without knowing it, they stumbled into some secret organized crime activity, and the hitmen moved in and forced Donna's car off the road and down a steep cliff. Mark was thrown out of the car, but Donna died in the flaming wreck. That same week, Mark, the professor, and David Red Eagle made a pact to strike back at the crime leaders who had killed Donna. Mark hit them hard and fast, almost obliterating the mafia family in Los Angeles, and scooping up the $450,000 in hoodlum money. With the money, they decided to launch a nationwide crime-fighting operation, striking at criminals anywhere who took advantage of the people. They had been fighting ever since. The professor went to his activity board and checked it. The 3-foot-high by 4-foot-wide wall map of the United States, with Hawaii and Alaska inserts, had nearly a dozen small red flags. 20 green squares showed where the penetrator had already swung into action. 2 areas had large red explosion stickers. These were the current and most volatile.